Welcome to this introduction to Corporate Turnaround's proprietary debt negotiating system. This tutorial was created specifically for the ASBDC. Using this program, we have worked out over 35,000 debts for over 5,000 cash-poor small businesses. The object of a restructuring is to help the small business owner resolve their overwhelming debt problem while keeping their creditors from putting them out of business. Yet all we are given to accomplish this task is the hope of a monthly payment which is about the same as the interest and charges that continue to accrue on the debt. One of our core beliefs is that creditors should be given settlement options that meet their needs as well as our clients. After all, we are asking for their cooperation and also for them to accept less than they're owed or for an extended payment plan or both. In this tutorial, we will be explaining the many factors and variables that go into every settlement. One of the most important aspects of our system is the consideration of each creditor's specific negotiating leverage and how that data is used to create appropriate and affordable settlements. Small businesses don't have these tools, and as a result, many business owners who negotiate their own debts often fail because they think that resolving their debts will be as easy as sending out letters and making a few phone calls. It isn't that easy. In a desire to get these issues over and done with, they end up settling too quickly and putting too much strain on their already hurting cash flow. The key to getting out of debt on an extremely tight cash flow is to make the right settlements with the right creditors at the right times and, most importantly, with the right payment terms. Said another way, don't settle faster than you should, don't settle for more money than you should, don't overcompensate creditors that pose little or no threat, and most importantly, don't accept payment terms that are too aggressive for your cash flow. Before agreeing to any settlement, there are many factors to consider, especially when just one bad settlement can put you out of business. In order to make appropriate and affordable settlements on a bare-bones budget, the first thing we analyze is the negotiating leverage of each creditor. How much bargaining power does each creditor have against the company and the business owner? What potential threats do they pose? To begin answering those questions, we look at the collection stage the debt is in. Is the creditor collecting on its own behalf, or has the account been placed with a collection agency? Is an attorney handling the account? Is there a lawsuit, or has a judgment been obtained? This is important because the further along a creditor has progressed, the more urgency there is to settle. And the more urgency there is, the more attractive a settlement offer can be to that creditor compared to creditors that pose less of a threat. Next, we look at the security level, which means other forms of leverage, such as whether the debt is personally guaranteed or not. And if it is personally guaranteed, does the guarantee have any value? Is there a lien on any collateral, and is that collateral needed? If it is needed, is it likely to be repossessed? Or does the creditor have a first position lien on all your assets? The higher the security level, the more consideration we give that creditor. Then we measure the need for the creditor. Are the creditor's services or products or equipment vital in order to stay in business? Or would it present a hardship or just maybe an inconvenience? Or are they not needed at all? It's important to note that vital creditors are of paramount importance and may need to be resolved before any other creditors. Again, the greater the need for the creditor, the more consideration we give that creditor. Next, we consider the probability of being sued simply based on the amount owed. The more that is owed, the greater the chances of being sued and the more consideration is given. The type of debt also plays a role in the calculation of settlement offers. Is the money owed to a supplier or contractor? Is it a credit card or a lease, a line of credit or a loan? Each one needs to be negotiated differently. So far, we've examined the different combinations of negotiating leverage each creditor can have. Once each creditor's overall leverage factor is determined, we compare that against the leverage of all the other creditors in the restructuring essentially enabling us to make more favorable offers to creditors that pose the greatest threats, and of course less favorable offers to those that pose little or no threat. Next comes our analysis of the creditor's past settlements with us. Knowing a creditor's typical course of action and when they've offered the best concessions and how much they've settled for in the past and their tendency to sue as opposed to writing off a debt gives us a tremendous advantage negotiating for our clients. So far, all the factors I've discussed are incorporated into every single settlement, but there's still much more to consider. Each creditor is attributed a monthly share of the client's monthly budget. That share is determined by the amount a creditor is owed, but is then weighted by their overall negotiating leverage before being compared to the total weighted debt in the program. This enables us to put all the creditors in their proper perspective. The monthly share gives us a benchmark for making settlements with each creditor. The idea is to obtain a settlement whose monthly payments are less than the monthly share. We also review which creditors have not settled and how much they are owed. This is important because the less debt that is settled, the more conservative we must be in our settlement offers. Conversely, the more debt that is settled, the less conservative we can afford to be. Another factor we consider is the time that a creditor has been in our program. The longer a creditor goes without settling, the more leeway we can give them because we have accomplished part of our goal prior to settlement. By negotiating over time, we've already bought our clients time to pay, and buying time is the key to getting out of debt on a tight budget. We also look at how the client is funding the restructuring. We compare the amount the client has committed to pay monthly to the total debt in the program, and this yields the percentage of the debt they are funding monthly. The lower the percentage, the more conservative we must be in our settlement offers, and vice versa. And finally, other settlement factors we consider are how much longer the client is expected to be in the program, the client's recent payment history to us, the amount of funds presently on account, and the share of those funds that are allocated for this creditor, which can be used toward a settlement. Now we are going to show you how our software takes everything we've discussed into consideration and uses that data to help us make the right settlements. Every settlement offer we make or receive is graded. This settlement grade is based on the degree of any reduction and the length of any payment plan that is given in the settlement offer. The bigger the reduction, the better the settlement grade. The longer the payment plan, the better the settlement grade. The settlement grade is then compared to that creditor's passing grade. The passing grade is established by each creditor's distinctive negotiating leverage, as discussed earlier. The less negotiating leverage a creditor has, the higher the passing grade will be, and the better the settlement terms need to be in order to be acceptable for our client. Naturally, any settlement offers that we initiate are most beneficial to our clients. They yield the highest settlement grades. The challenge comes when a collector makes a counteroffer. How do we know whether to accept the settlement or not? Our software enables us to input the terms of their counteroffer and determine if those terms are acceptable. Before we agree to a settlement, two conditions must be met. The settlement grade must meet or exceed the passing grade established for that creditor. Secondly, any monthly payments should be less than the monthly share allocated for that creditor. Now let's look at an example. This creditor is one of 10 and is owed $7,500. They are owed the least of any creditor in the restructuring. They've been in our program only 3 months. They are not represented by a collection agency or attorney. There are no personal guarantors, no liens, no lawsuit or judgment, and there is no need for their goods or services. They simply have the lowest negotiating leverage of any creditor. Because of this, we give them a passing settlement grade of 90. Now let's say they make us an offer to settle for 50 cents on the dollar, payable immediately in a lump sum. Lump sum also means we have 0 months to pay the settlement, so we'll put a 0 here. The settlement grade seen here is only 65.56, a far cry from the grade of 90 that is required in order to settle with this creditor. As attractive a savings as 50% might be, the computer tells us that this settlement is below grade and therefore unacceptable at this time. Because the offer is unacceptable, we would counter-offer by simply removing the limit on time to pay. Here's where the real negotiating starts. They originally offered 50% in a lump sum payment, but we are countering at 50% over 97 months. However, that is what it will take to settle with this creditor at this point in time, because the settlement grade is 100, which is passing, and the monthly payment is within the creditor's allocated monthly share. Now let's say the collector counters my offer at 50% over 18 months. The settlement grade is now 95.74, which is passing and acceptable. But the computer now tells us that the payments are too high. If the creditor posed a serious threat or needed to be settled at this time, which this creditor does not, we would either counter-offer again or give our client the option to come up with the additional $169.91 a month that would be needed, but only if they wanted to accept the settlement and could afford the extra money required. Now let's see what would happen if this same creditor had a lawsuit combined with a personal guarantee from the business owner. Their negotiating leverage would increase dramatically, and the passing settlement grade would therefore go down to 60. A 50% lump sum settlement yields a grade of 65.56, which is acceptable. However, since we have no money on account at this time, the client once again has the option to come up with the additional funds that are needed, but only if they want to, and also can afford the extra funding. Of course, this is just an introduction to the basics of our software and the way we negotiate debts. The actual process is much more complicated and also much more time-consuming.